The cracks in America's housing market are no longer whispers, they're thunderclaps. Prices are plunging, inventory is surging, and cities once buzzing with growth are now teetering on the edge of collapse. Families are fleeing, businesses are shuttering, and once thriving neighborhoods are emptying out. Today, we revealed the 10 worst U.S. housing markets turning into ghost towns in 2025. These aren't just overpriced cities. They're places where migration has reversed. Homes sit unsold for months, and the promise of opportunity is quickly evaporating. Stay with us until the very end because number 1 is the clearest warning of where America's housing future may be headed. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to Discover the Nation. Your support helps us keep uncovering the stories others won't tell.
Number 10, Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland was once the proud industrial heart of America, a city that roared with steel mills, shipping, and a workforce that powered the nation. But in 2025, that legacy feels like a ghost of the past. On paper, Cleveland looks affordable. Home prices hover between $120,000 and $150,000, well below the national average. But affordability doesn't tell the full story. The real crisis is demand, or rather, the lack of it. Cleveland's population has been in free fall for decades. Since 1950, the city has lost more than half of its residents, and the exodus hasn't stopped. Entire neighborhoods stand as eerie reminders of better days. Vacant homes with broken windows, grass growing through cracked sidewalks, and blocks where only 1 or 2 families remain. What's left behind is a cycle of foreclosure, crime, and disinvestment that eats away at community life. Developers who once promised revitalization have largely pulled out, deterred by stagnant wages and shrinking job markets. While healthcare and education remain anchors, they're not enough to fuel large-scale growth. And crime in struggling areas only deepens the hesitation of families who might otherwise consider moving in. The tragic irony is that Cleveland's low prices can't attract buyers because the value isn't just about the house. It's about the neighborhood, the schools, the safety, and the future. In 2025, Cleveland's housing market doesn't look like an opportunity. It looks like a warning, a city that became too hollow to rebuild, sliding further into urban decay.
Number 9, Detroit, Michigan. Detroit has been here before. Once the beating heart of American innovation, the Motor City collapsed under the weight of deindustrialization and decades of decline. In 2025, the scars are still visible. The median home price sits around $95,000, one of the lowest in the country. But low doesn't mean healthy. In fact, it hides a far darker truth. Across Detroit's outer neighborhoods, vast stretches of abandoned homes remain. Boarded windows, overgrown lots, and collapsing roofs create an atmosphere more haunting than hopeful. Many properties are unsellable, even at rock-bottom prices. While downtown and midtown have seen some revitalization, trendy restaurants, sports stadiums, and tech startups, those changes barely scratch the surface of the city's housing reality. The population continues to decline, and with it, the tax base. Services weaken, schools close, and infrastructure struggles to keep up. Rising costs for insurance, utilities, and basic maintenance only add to the strain for the families who've chosen to stay. For many, the promise of a Detroit comeback has begun to feel like a false dawn. Investors who once gambled on Detroit's rebirth are retreating. Foreclosures are ticking upward again, and property values are stagnating. What remains is a city caught between glimmers of progress downtown and vast ghost town districts just beyond. In 2025, large swaths of Detroit remain frozen in time, living reminders that not every American city recovers.
Number 8, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh once stood as a shining example of reinvention. When the steel mills shuttered, the city leaned on education, healthcare, and tech to power its revival. For years, it worked. But by 2025, cracks are showing again, and they're widening fast. The median home price is around $200,000, seemingly reasonable, yet the housing market is drowning under the weight of oversupply. Young people are leaving, chasing higher-paying jobs in cities with more vibrant economies. Retirees are downsizing or moving away, leaving homes behind that no one seems eager to purchase. Entire neighborhoods are slipping into cycles of disinvestment. As properties sit vacant, blight spreads, eroding values block by block. The city's schools, already stretched thin, are closing in certain districts due to declining enrollment. Infrastructure, bridges, roads, and utilities shows its age, while economic anchors like healthcare and tech aren't expanding quickly enough to offset the population loss. The tragedy of Pittsburgh's housing market isn't that it's overpriced, it's that demand is evaporating. A house can be cheap, but if no one wants to live there, cheap quickly turns into worthless. For residents, the warning signs are clear. Without an influx of new migration or economic growth, Pittsburgh risks hollowing out. In 2025, entire districts are already drifting toward ghost town status, threatening to undo decades of hard-fought progress.
Number 7. St. Louis, Missouri. St. Louis, once celebrated as the gateway to the West, now stands as a cautionary tale of decline. With median home values hovering around $180,000, the city may appear affordable, but affordability loses meaning when demand is evaporating. For every family that moves in, several more pack up and leave. The challenges are layered. Crime rates remain among the highest in the nation, particularly violent crime, which scares away potential homebuyers. Infrastructure, from aging bridges to deteriorating public schools, struggles to keep up with basic needs, and population loss has accelerated. The city has shed more than half its residents since its peak in the 1950s, and 2025 offers no signs of reversal. Vacancy rates are surging, especially in North St. Louis, where entire blocks of abandoned homes resemble ghostly relics. Boarded-up windows, overgrown yards, and collapsing roofs are more common than open houses. Efforts at revitalization, new stadiums, urban renewal projects, downtown investment simply haven't spread far enough to stem the exodus. Investors increasingly see St. Louis not as an opportunity, but as a liability. Locals admit the city feels fragile, one bad economic shift away from deeper crisis. The truth is hard to ignore. St. Louis's housing market isn't just weak, it's actively collapsing, leaving behind hollow streets where community life once thrived. Number 6. Buffalo, New York. Buffalo enjoyed an unexpected housing boom during the pandemic when remote workers fled expensive metros and sought refuge in cheaper markets. Median home prices surged past $220,000, and for a moment, Buffalo looked like a comeback story. But in 2025, that boom has collapsed into bust. Listings sit untouched for months, and the demand that once propped up prices has vanished. The problems are clear. Harsh winters drive up utility bills, sometimes costing families thousands just to keep homes warm. Property taxes are steep, adding another layer of strain on budgets. And once families experience Buffalo's limited job market, many quickly reconsider. Outmigration has resumed, reversing any pandemic-era population gains. Entire neighborhoods are slipping back into familiar patterns of decline. Vacant homes, creeping blight, and a sense of déjà vu from Buffalo's last housing slump. Younger residents are leaving for opportunities elsewhere, while retirees downsize or relocate to warmer states. The city's once promising surge has been exposed as temporary, fueled by a fleeting wave of remote work and cheap prices, rather than sustainable growth. For many, Buffalo is becoming a slow-motion ghost town. Its housing market isn't just cooling, it's collapsing under the weight of harsh realities that short-lived hype could never overcome. Number 5. New Orleans, Louisiana. New Orleans remains one of America's cultural treasures, a city alive with music, food, and history.
But beneath the charm, its housing market is unraveling fast. The median home value hovers around $260,000, yet that number masks a far more fragile reality. Insurance premiums for flood and hurricane coverage have skyrocketed, sometimes exceeding annual mortgage payments. For many households, it's simply unaffordable to stay. Climate change has turned homeownership here into a gamble. Rising sea levels and routine flooding make large swaths of the city increasingly unlivable. Each hurricane season brings billions in damage, and neighborhoods once full of life are now scarred by abandoned houses and families forced to start over elsewhere. Wealthier residents retreat to higher, safer suburbs, while working-class communities bear the brunt of risk and disrepair. Beyond the environmental challenges, long-standing poverty and weak infrastructure weigh heavily. Streets crumble, utilities falter, and crime in certain districts erodes any sense of stability. Schools struggle with declining enrollment, and job opportunities remain limited, fueling another wave of migration out of the city. The result? Once vibrant communities are dotted with boarded-up homes and empty lots. In 2025, large parts of New Orleans already resemble ghost towns, not because of housing prices, but because survival itself has become too expensive.
Number 4. Baltimore, Maryland. Baltimore tells one of the most tragic housing stories in America. With median home prices sitting near $210,000, the numbers suggest affordability, but the reality is far darker. Crime, unemployment, and decades of disinvestment have carved deep scars across the city. Nearly 15% of Baltimore's homes are vacant, one of the highest rates in the nation. Whole blocks of once thriving neighborhoods now resemble ghostly reminders of what the city used to be. Efforts to revitalize neighborhoods face uphill battles against systemic decline. Schools remain chronically underfunded, public transportation struggles, and basic infrastructure like water mains and roads are in constant disrepair. Migration continues to flow outward as families seek safer streets and better opportunities elsewhere. For those who stay, property values are stagnant, and even the most determined homeowners face the weight of declining neighborhoods. Investors tread cautiously. Many won't touch Baltimore real estate, and those who do often buy properties for pennies on the dollar, only to see them sit empty or deteriorate further. Even with pockets of redevelopment near the waterfront and downtown, the broader city continues to crumble. In 2025, Baltimore feels less like a market correction and more like a slow descent into abandonment. One boarded-up house, one shuttered school, one struggling family at a time.
Number 3. Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis is a city defined by music, soul, and cultural legacy. But in 2025, its housing market is hitting sour notes. Median home prices hover near $190,000, but affordability loses meaning when safety and stability collapse. Rising crime rates, stagnant job growth, and a crumbling infrastructure are driving residents out in record numbers. Blight spreads across neighborhoods as vacant homes multiply. Many streets are lined with overgrown lawns, boarded-up windows, and properties stripped of value. Younger families, once drawn to Memphis's affordability, are now leaving in search of stronger economies, safer communities, and better schools. The outmigration leaves behind an aging population and weakened housing demand. The problem isn't just housing, it's the unraveling of entire communities. Schools close as enrollment drops. Small businesses shutter as customer bases shrink. The city's cultural identity, built on music and history, struggles to mask the erosion happening on the ground. Memphis's housing crisis is about more than numbers. It's about a city's fabric fraying under the weight of crime, poverty, and neglect. Without intervention, many neighborhoods risk becoming ghost town shells, reminders of what once was a vibrant and soulful city.
Number 2. Chicago, Illinois. Chicago remains one of America's great cities, a hub of culture, commerce, and history, but in 2025, its housing market is cracking under immense pressure. With median home prices hovering near $315,000, the numbers appear steady, yet the reality on the ground tells a much bleaker story. Property taxes here are among the highest in the country, draining family budgets year after year. For many, the burden has become unbearable. Outmigration is accelerating. Residents, especially middle-class families, are leaving in droves, seeking refuge in suburban counties or entirely different states, with lighter taxes, safer streets, and better schools. Entire blocks on the south and west sides are emptying, leaving behind hollow neighborhoods riddled with vacancies. The vacancies, in turn, drag down property values, fueling a vicious cycle of decline. Meanwhile, Chicago's staggering pension obligations and chronic budget deficits put immense strain on city services. Police departments are stretched thin, sanitation is inconsistent, and schools close classrooms due to shrinking enrollment and dwindling resources. Families who remain are paying more but receiving less, a trade-off that feels increasingly unfair. Chicago still has cultural firepower, from world-class museums to sports teams and architectural marvels, but the shine of its cultural crown cannot mask the struggles of its neighborhoods. Without sweeping reforms, the city risks repeating the fate of Rust Belt cities like Detroit and Cleveland. Large swaths of Chicago may soon serve as a haunting symbol, a once great metropolis sliding toward ghost town conditions, priced into decline by its own weight.
Number 1. San Francisco, California. San Francisco, once the shimmering jewel of the West Coast, now stands as the clearest and most chilling example of America's housing crisis spiraling into ghost town reality. Average home values remain an eye-watering $1.3 million, and rents hover around $3,200. But beneath those lofty numbers, demand has collapsed. Families, workers, and businesses alike are fleeing, leaving behind a city hollowed out. Downtown paints the starkest picture. Office towers sit half empty, their former tenants gone as remote work reshaped the tech economy. Side streets, once alive with coffee shops and bustling businesses, now echo with silence as storefront after storefront sits shuttered. Entire blocks feel deserted, their emptiness amplified by the rising homelessness crisis unfolding in plain sight. Even longtime San Franciscans admit the city no longer feels like home. Crime has rattled residents, drug use has spilled into public spaces, and the cost of simply existing in the city has become unbearable. Add California's crushing taxes, astronomical utility bills, and crumbling infrastructure, and it's clear the city is no longer sustainable for the middle class. The irony is brutal. The Golden Gate still glows at sunset. The hills still boast breathtaking views, and the architecture remains iconic. But those symbols now stand in haunting contrast to the reality on the ground. Streets emptying, neighborhoods fading, and a city priced into oblivion. In 2025, San Francisco doesn't just represent an overpriced market, it represents the collapse of the dream itself. Beautiful from afar, but broken within, San Francisco has become America's ultimate housing ghost town.
And there you have it, the 10 worst housing markets in America, where once vibrant cities are now slipping into ghost town silence. From Cleveland and Detroit's decades-long battles with decline, to Chicago's hollowing neighborhoods and San Francisco's dramatic collapse under the weight of its own success, one message echoes across the nation. A city is only as strong as the people who can afford to live there. What we're witnessing in 2025 is not just a housing correction, it's a transformation. Families are being priced out, investors are retreating, and the very soul of these cities, their schools, their small businesses, their communities, is fading with every boarded-up home and every moving truck that drives away. The lesson is clear. Affordability isn't about cheap prices or million-dollar homes. It's about balance. And when that balance breaks, when wages and quality of life can't keep pace, even America's proudest cities can crumble into shells of what they once were. This was 10 worst housing markets turning into ghost towns in 2025. If you found this countdown eye-opening, make sure to subscribe to Discover the Nation. Together, we'll continue uncovering the hidden truths behind America's housing collapse, one city at a time.